What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Jim Galvin here. And a couple of weeks ago, I published a video highlighting how foundationally important power development work is for people prepping for the military, just recreational bodybuilders, anyone wanting to stay moderately athletic, hybrid athletes, CrossFit athletes, and the list goes on. And in addition to the why, I outlined a rough 4-week template for how we can develop power, specifically through the lens of the upper body. But today, as expected, headed south, power development session for the lower body. Getting straight into it, guys, I actually did this session yesterday, so a lot of the B-roll that you're going to see over the next 5-10 minutes was filmed about 24 hours ago, except for the first of the 4 sessions that we're going to be covering today, which is a primer. For those of you that are unfamiliar with either myself or this kind of word term generally, that is absolutely fine. Basically, primer, the way that I kind of articulate it is it's the middle ground between a warm-up. So you've done your warm-up, you've done your general warming phase with kind of 3 to 5 minutes on a piece of erg kit. You've done a little bit of foam rolling and mobility stuff. And then you've done some dynamic ballistic work to kind of prime and innovate the muscles with some, high knees and bouncy lunges kind of thing. Before you then go into effectively the main heavy lifting part of the session, primer is the first part. It's not really an extension of the warm-up, it's kind of a lead on from it though, and it's something that's super light, but super snappy, and it is basically to make sure that we don't have too much load going through the system, and just to refine that innovation, that mind-muscle connection, and prime that central nervous system as much as possible. Upper body, a few weeks ago, we did like a medicine ball or slam ball throw, and a lot of throwing the power can come from the legs and the hips, so what I did is I effectively disabled that and did it from the knees. For lower body, primers are a lot more linear, and it's basically anything that's explosion-based or anything jump-based. There are a couple of different options here, and one of the things I would say, regardless of what you did when you were flipping 16 and you had the same tissue fibers as a fucking rubber duck, you could just fall off a balcony, get hit by a lorry, anything could happen to you, and you just spring back into position. If you are late 20s onwards, you probably need to ease yourself back in. So although you might remember doing certain things and being capable of certain movements and certain ground contact reactively and you're fine, be aware that time does go by and tissues tend to kind of solidify a little bit. So there are a lot of different variations of jump exercises for primer, all the way from just a little double-legged hop where we're controlling the impact, all the way up to like some single leg depth jump into broad jumps. The good news is the stuff right at the kind of the safe end of the spectrum, you will not get a down-regulated benefit from that. That is basically a fancy way of saying it is always going to yield benefits regardless of how naturally powerful you are. So if you're jumping up onto a really low box and you're attempting to land almost with straight legs, so there's not even much of a tuck, and then you're gently stepping down, the more and more powerful you get, you can scale that up in terms of the height of the box that you're able to land straight-legged or near straight-legged on. But especially if you've been doing athletic training and kind of different power domains for probably less than about 6 to 12 months, I recommend, as far as primers go, you keep it fairly safe. And on both my YouTube channel here and even on my Instagram, I've shown you kind of one of my favorite go-tos is kneeling down with my laces flat on the ground, and then a nice kind of reactive jump, minimizing the contact time with the ground, boom, snapping up, and then up into a split position. This is an advanced move, and I know that my tissues and my connective tissues, my everything can handle that slight minimal contact time with the ground. I know that I can split, and I know that I've got enough time to go through that motion and land double-legged, controlling kind of the impact in the ground. So that's one of the benefits of lower body primers, is that you can maintain a good adaptation all the way through, even on the safer end of the spectrum, with doing some double leg jumps up onto a box and then stepping slowly down from there. So that's section 1 of 4, that's the primer done. Now moving on to section 2, which is the main compound lift in the session. This is where it starts to get a little bit spicier, guys. So the primers are pretty universal in every session and obviously should be varied a little bit, otherwise you're just gonna get flipping bored. But overall, I don't wanna focus too much on that. And the chances are I'll do a video specifically on lower and upper body primers at some point in the next couple of months. But the main compound of this particular cycle, this example program that I'm gonna walk you through, are box squats. But zooming out a little bit and looking in the macro, what I want you to imagine that we're doing is we are doing box squats every leg day for 4 weeks. But the way in which we execute the box squat is gonna be slightly different. Again, consistent and congruent with the upper body session. So week 1 of the cycle, controlled eccentric tempo, 3 or 4 seconds down, just enough of a pause on the box that you basically take out the stretch reflex, so you're not just kind of like slamming your ass down on it and then jumping back up. So just enough that you take a little bit of the bounce out and then driving up from there. Controlled eccentric tempo, slight pause and then up. The chances are that is the way that most people would be executing box squats anyway. And say we're sticking around 4 reps for both today and every other leg day in this cycle. So that's week 1, 3 sets, 6 sets, whatever. I'm not gonna go too in depth with this hypothetical program, but in terms of the way that it will be executed, 3 or 4 second eccentric down, 1 second pause just to take the stretch reflex out, and then driving up from there. Week number dos of the cycle, and as you can see now, we've got some bands involved. A lot of good quality squat cages will actually have kind of pins that stick out the bottom of the rack, like slightly behind effectively where you'd step to. So you'd have bands that would go from here up towards the bar. You'd then be facing that way, unrack, step back, and then straight down. Effectively, the pins should be directly below the barbell path. That's what a lot of good racks have. We didn't have that, so I got some 40 kilo dumbbells because I was like, there's no way they're gonna be lifted off the ground. Put them either side and then I actually tied a little bit of a knot in the resistance band, as you can see here, just to add to the tension slightly, and then wrap the bands onto the inside of the barbell. Again, boys and girls, working with your flipping natural strength curve. That is to say, we are so much stronger the closer we get to the top of a movement. If we only ever have on our back, basically if we only ever squat right at the top, the same amount of weight that we're squatting right at the bottom, we're losing an unbelievable potential of adaptation at the top. Getting bands involved effectively works with this. So I'm going down under control, brief pause in the box again, and then driving up. And the amount of resistance, basically the amount of extra weight that the band is adding on, is getting more and more and more the closer to the top I get. But that goes with my natural strength curve because I'm stronger towards the top. So as well as getting an extra strength benefit at the top, it is also cueing your brain to accelerate through the movement, because every single centimeter, every single inch or whatever you go up, effectively what you're lifting is getting just that little bit heavier. So if you over drill these resistance band movements, it sets up that speed dial in your brain to continue accelerating through the movement, as opposed to just doing what most people do, which is as soon as they're past the sticking point, they just kind of relax and bring their hips through. So week one, we've got 3 or 4 seconds on the eccentric, brief pause, and then up, basically a standard box squat. Week 2, we've got a similar tempo, but we've added some bands in there as well. Week 3, this is an interesting one. We're actually gonna go slightly lighter. We're gonna keep the bands on, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna go a lot more dynamically now. So I'm not too worried about eccentric tempo. I'm not even worried too much about kind of like my arse contact in the box. I don't want to use it as a flipping trampoline, but I want to go from kind of the descending phase to the elevating phase as quick as possible and cycle through those 2 movements. And this is where the reps are going to get a little bit higher, actually. I should have said that earlier. So week 1, you're doing sets of 4. Week 2, you're doing sets of 4. Week 3, sets of, I don't know, 7 to 10. And if you don't like sets of 7, you're an idiot. And then moving on to week 4, refreshing. We are actually going to go a little bit against the grain now, and similar to what I was explaining a minute ago about how we are so much stronger at the top, and sometimes the top end strength of your lower body, or top end strength of any movement really, but specifically the lower body, because most of the time we walk around on our legs and that's the bit of our body that's in contact with the ground. We're so much stronger at the top end that I'm a big advocate of giving that top end some deliberate attention. And with the next exercise that we're going to do, we're A, focusing just on the top end, and B, not having any eccentric portion of the movement. And the exercise is, drum roll please, Anderson squats. So you may have seen this on a couple of my previous videos. This is where basically you're not taking a barbell out from kind of regular J hooks. This is where you're taking it off of pins, but it's set below. You drop under into kind of a quarter or half squat position, wherever you want the angle to be, but probably 90 degrees at the knee. And then effectively it is concentric only, lifting up. You're not dropping it back, but effectively you can lower quite quickly knowing that the pins are going to catch you. The amount of weight that you can lift on your back should be about an extra 30%. It's massive, it's absolutely flipping massive. So again, hopefully it just makes you think. We wouldn't want to do all of our training like that and have no strength at depth at all. But the fact of the matter is, if 1 week in every 4, we focus just on the top end, we're not suddenly going to become shit and unfunctional, because 75% of the time, we're still making sure we squat appropriately. It's just that now and again, we're injecting that stimulus of giving the top end part of the lower body its own deliberate attention, which, considering it can be more than 30% stronger, surely it needs, because otherwise every single time you can get a 1 rep max squat and arse the grass, the top end of your lower body isn't even fucking warming up. So that's section 2, guys, which is the main compound done. And again, we've split that into kind of a 4-week cycle. Number 1, general box squats, 3 or 4 seconds down, short pause and then up. Number 2, with the bands. Number 3, go slightly lighter and do sets of between 7 and 10, but dynamically. Don't lose all composure and look like you're an absolute flipping octopus that's just been tasered. Still keep it controlled, but it's as fast as you can while staying under control. And then number 4, all we're gonna do is we're gonna do some Anderson squats, giving that last little bit of top end range its own deliberate attention, which it is definitely looking forward to because it is so flipping strong and underutilized unless you do this stuff often. Oh, lots of info so far, guys. If you are enjoying it, please do smash that like button. It takes you 2 seconds, but it will make my day. And also, to make sure that you don't miss future content like this, make sure you subscribe, make sure that you smash the notification bell icon logo thing to get notified the next time I'm dropping wisdom bombs on you. Primer, main compound, unilateral. That is what we're going to do. We're going to do a unilateral exercise, which basically means unilateral, one side, single leg. I'm going to do here some incredibly light step-ups. And the reason I'm going to do some incredibly light step-ups is exactly the same reason that I didn't do any primers yesterday. And that is my ankle currently looks about 27 months pregnant. At time of recording, it's currently 22 minutes past 4 on Wednesday afternoon. And at 8 o'clock this morning, I had an emergency appointment in an ankle clinic to drain quite a lot of fluid out of my ankle. And it's still fat. Squats for some reason didn't bother it. Step-ups did. But either way, we can focus on this. So I'm not going to teach you guys to suck eggs. You're all absolute flipping pro legend ninja warriors. What I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on 2 primary coaching points. The first one is that as much as possible, you're deactivating that back leg. If you've ever heard me talk about step-ups before, this is key. The working leg gets such a benefit because it is not being helped and has to overcome the inertia of everything straight off the bat with basically your back leg bitching out and doing very little. And the way that you can do that is by locking out the knee of the back leg, of the straight leg, and putting the toes up towards the sky. That means you can't roll like heel to toe, and you can't effectively use your quad to get some knee extension as well, because it's already extended. So by that logic, the whole back leg is deactivated and the front leg has to do all the work. So that's the first coaching point. Deactivate the back leg as much as possible by locking out the knee and putting the toes up towards the ceiling. The second thing is, as soon as you've gone past the sticking point, which is that couple of inches area where everything starts to slow down, what I don't want you to do is continue to slow down, continue to decelerate, and just bring the other foot forward. That's why with me, you're seeing this leg extend really flipping quickly, and the other knee goes boom, boom. So it drives up nice and quick. You don't need to pause or hold at the top, especially because I was doing it on a flipping plyo box because none of the benches seem to be appropriately stable. But knee up and down. Between 6 and 10 reps on each side. In my opinion, if you're doing a heavy 6, you can just do one and then the other. If you're doing a heavy 10 and it's like starting to take some energy out of the stabilizers, I would rack the bar, wait for about 15 to 20 seconds and then go on the other leg. So as you see there, guys, everything else is executed as you'd expect. Keeping that chest up, making sure you've got a belly full of air to keep nice and stable. Good strong grip on the bar without the elbows moving too much. And then focusing on those 2 primary power development points. Deactivate the back leg as much as possible and continue to accelerate with the front leg, so much so your hips come through nice and quick, and so does that knee. Boom, boom, up and down. Job done. The fourth and final section, guys, hip hinge or hip extension focus. 1,000,001 different examples of this. However, banded RDLs are probably the go-to favorite. Band underneath the feet, band around the barbell, and doubled up like this, you'd be surprised at how much extra tension it actually adds at the top. But the good news is it's not taking anywhere near as much effort to hold it when you're down in a potential paused hip hinge position. I think with pretty much every element of training, people get a lot of volume doing hip hinge work with, I don't know, holding it in that position when they're doing bent over rows or you know, if they're going to a CrossFit session or picking something up or whatever it may be. So when I do deliberate hip hinge work, I like to keep the reps quite low to actually try and elicit a proper strength effect, as opposed to just doing another set of 15, where we're kind of getting a muscular hypertrophy benefit, but realistically, we're hitting those numbers in some kind of movement every day. So I encourage you with this to be a little bit more ambitious and put a little bit more flipping weight on the bar. So 140 for me, again, absolutely no dorsiflexion or plantar flexion involved, which means this was okay and I was not in extraordinary pain. So picking the bar up, big deep breath at the top as you go down. Don't rebreathe when you're in that hinge position, holding it there for a fraction of a second and then firing the hips through. And again, you're attempting to come through nice and quick, being that the focus of this flipping video is on lower body power. And the use of the resistance bands is definitely gonna help that, because again, it cues that thing in your brain once more, telling you to continue to accelerate all the way through the movement. Primer, main compound, unilateral, hip hinge, done. There is an optional 5th section at the end, which is a little bit of a burner if you want, where you can basically do a little bit of a superset, which is what I did. I like to superset in any lower body burner, a primarily quad-based exercise and a primarily posterior chain-based exercise. So some lightly weighted goblet squats, as you're seeing here, supersetted with some band-resisted hypers. It was the perfect kind of combo for me. About 10 to 15 of each, pretty much no break, just going back and forth. But it's gonna be about 30 seconds when you mess around with different kit and maybe get a sip of water anyway. 3 or 4 rounds, and that's a great way to just get a little bit of localized tissue perfusion, so some blood pumping to the area, because obviously the sets have been fairly low, strength, speed, and power-based for the main compound, the unilateral, and the hip hinge. So to finish off with a little bit of a burner, There are physiological benefits, but as much as anything, if you're anything like me, having the psychological benefit of just leaving with a little bit more of a kind of a lactic burn is just nice. It just kind of makes you feel as though you just finished yourself off. Keep it clean. Hope you did enjoy, guys. Again, if you did, please do smash that like button. 2 seconds for you. It will make my day. Please do subscribe if you have not yet done so. Any questions on anything I've covered, because it is a little bit more intricate and nuanced than some of my other content, and especially if you're more of kind of a military prepper or recreational bodybuilder, the power development stuff is just a world that isn't really touched upon in either of these domains, or really in the CrossFit world. They do their version of power development stuff with a lot of different kind of Olympic lifting complexes, but in terms of rate of force development work, band resisted, natural strength curve, I've never heard of any of those terms being used in a CrossFit box that I've been to. So any questions on anything at all, just put it down in the comment section below. And as always, beautiful people, stay strong, stay healthy, stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next video.